Welcome to the extremely boring stories. Today we listening the history of ancient farming seasons. You are standing on flat land. There are no mountains to guide you, no forests to shelter you, and very little shade. The ground beneath your feet is dry, cracked in some places, and damp in others. Two rivers, slow, unpredictable, and brown, cut through the plain. This is Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and the Euphrates. And here, thousands of years ago, the idea of a farming season began to quietly take shape. Before calendars, before written dates, before numbered years, time was measured by waiting. You waited for the rivers to rise. You waited for the soil to soften. You waited for seeds to push through the earth. For the people of early Mesopotamia, the year was not a circle divided into months. It was a long chain of tasks, each dependent on the last. Farming here did not begin with confidence. It began with uncertainty. The rivers that made life possible were also dangerous. Unlike the Nile, which flooded with comforting regularity, the Tigris and Euphrates flooded unpredictably. Sometimes they rose gently. Sometimes they destroyed everything. You could not trust them, but you could not survive without them either. This uneasy relationship shaped the earliest farming seasons. As you move through this land in your mind, imagine small villages made of mud brick, clustered close to canals. These canals are not natural. They were dug slowly, with hand tools, over generations. Every farming season began with maintenance. Before planting anything, you cleared silt from the channels. You repaired collapsed banks. You argued with neighbors about water rights. Farming was already boring, already repetitive, already full of routine. The year often began not with planting, but with watching the sky. Rainfall in Mesopotamia was limited and unreliable. Winter rains mattered, but they were never enough on their own. So farmers learned to store water and redirect it. This meant the farming year began months before seeds ever touched the soil. Planting was survival. Grain, especially barley, became the center of life because it tolerated salty soil and irregular water better than wheat. Barley did not demand perfection. It survived neglect. And so it survived history. When you think of Mesopotamian farming, think of barley fields stretching low and pale under a dull sky. Planting usually took place in the cooler months, after the worst heat had passed. You would walk slowly behind an ox pulling a simple wooden plow. The plow did not turn the soil deeply. It scratched it. Seeds were dropped by hand, scattered unevenly. Some would sprout. Many would not. No one expected perfection. This was not romantic work. It was monotonous. Step, drop, step, drop, over and over again. The seasons taught patience through repetition. As the crops grew, the farming season entered its longest phase, waiting. There was little to do but watch for pests, repair irrigation channels again, and hope the rivers stayed within their banks. Locusts were a constant threat. So was drought. So was flooding. Every season carried the possibility of hunger. You did not measure time by weeks. You measured it by how tall the grain had grown. Harvest came suddenly. When it came, it dominated everything. Entire communities worked together, cutting grain with stone or early metal sickles. The work was exhausting and urgent. Delay meant loss. Grain left standing too long could rot or be eaten by birds. After harvest, the season was not over. Grain had to be dried, stored, guarded. Storage was survival. Large communal granaries emerged not out of generosity, but necessity. Someone had to manage them. Someone had to count. Someone had to record. This is how writing quietly entered the farming season, not for poetry, but for accounting. You are still here, on the same wide plain between the rivers, but time has moved forward. You have survived one farming year, and now you understand something important. The season is not just a period of work. It is the structure of your entire existence. By now, you no longer think of yourself as someone who farms. You are part of farming itself. Your body has learned the rhythm of bending, lifting, waiting, and worrying. The farming season has shaped your muscles, your sleep, and even the way you think about the future. In Mesopotamia, survival depended on collective labor. No single household could maintain canals alone. Irrigation systems required constant attention, and neglect by one family could flood or starve another. This meant that the farming season was also a social contract. When the season demanded labor, refusal was not just laziness, it was danger. You worked alongside neighbors you may not like. You shared water with families you did not trust. The season did not care about personal feelings. It required cooperation or collapse. As seasons passed, this cooperation hardened into hierarchy. Someone had to decide when canals were cleared. Someone had to organize harvest labor. Someone had to store grain and redistribute it during lean months. These people became administrators, priests, and eventually kings. Farming seasons quietly created power. Religion grew directly from this uncertainty. You prayed not for happiness, but for predictable floods. Gods in Mesopotamia were not gentle. They were moody, distant, and easily angered, much like the rivers themselves. Offerings were timed carefully within the farming season, placed at moments when anxiety peaked: before planting, during floods, before harvest. Temples became centers of agricultural management. Grain offerings filled their storage rooms. Priests tracked seasons using stars and shadows, slowly developing calendars. Time itself became sacred because it controlled food. Daily life during the growing season was dull, repetitive, and physically draining. Meals were simple, mostly bread and porridge. Meat was rare. Hunger hovered constantly at the edge of life. Even in good years, you ate carefully. Even in abundance, restraint was a habit. Children learned the season early. They carried water, scared birds from fields, and helped thresh grain. There was no concept of childhood free from labor. The season did not pause for youth. When drought struck, and it often did, the season stretched painfully. Grain grew thin. Irrigation channels dried. People argued more. Records from clay tablets show increased debts during bad years. Families borrowed grain against future harvests that might never come. Debt could turn farmers into servants. The season could quietly take away freedom. Flooding was worse. When rivers broke their banks violently, fields vanished under mud. Seed stores were ruined. Homes collapsed. Recovery could take years. Some villages never recovered at all. Archaeology shows settlements abandoned after repeated seasonal failures. And yet, people stayed. Why stay in a place that demanded so much and promised so little? Because the season also brought knowledge. Each year taught small lessons. Where water lingered. Which soil held moisture longer. When to plant slightly earlier or later. This accumulated wisdom made survival slightly more likely. Farming seasons encouraged patience. You learn to think months ahead. You learn that effort today might only matter next year. This long view changed how humans understood time itself. Even rest was seasonal. After harvest, work slowed, but worry did not. You repaired tools. You patched walls. You counted grain again and again. You listened to elders tell stories of past seasons, good and bad, turning memory into instruction. As years passed, the farming season became tradition. Rituals hardened. Tasks followed expected order. Deviating felt dangerous. Innovation was slow because survival depended on familiarity. Boring routines were safer than bold changes. You find yourself in a long, narrow valley, framed on either side by desert. Sand stretches toward the horizon, pale and lifeless, yet through its center flows a river unlike any other, the Nile. Its waters move steadily, predictably, though not without variation. The people of ancient Egypt depended entirely on this river, its cycles governing the hours, days, and months of their lives. Life here is defined by waiting. You do not plant seeds on a whim. You do not hope for rain, because rain is almost irrelevant. Instead, you watch the river rise, marking the slow approach of the flood. For centuries, people have learned to measure time by the level of water at certain points along the banks. They watch, they record, they calculate, always trying to anticipate when the Nile will spill over its edges. Your world is flat and open. You can see other farmers in the distance, standing at the edge of their fields with simple wooden staffs, measuring water levels, murmuring calculations to themselves. The inundation of the river is not just a natural event, it is a social one. Entire villages pause their routines in quiet anticipation. Farmers wait for the flood, for it will decide what will grow, what will fail, what will sustain them through the long months ahead. Preparation for the flood begins long before water appears. Fields must be cleared of debris. Embankments must be strengthened. Canals must be inspected and repaired. Every stone moved, every bank reinforced is an investment in survival. The river is generous but capricious, and even the slightest miscalculation can be disastrous. When the flood finally arrives, it does so with a quiet inevitability rather than sudden drama. Water rises slowly, inch by inch, covering fields that will soon yield their harvest. The soil, once dry and cracked, absorbs the silt the river brings, nutrient-rich mud that will sustain crops for the months to come. Farmers step carefully into these waters, checking depth, redirecting flow, guiding it toward the plots that need it most. The season of inundation is not a time of labor, but of observation. You record how far the water reaches, how quickly it rises, and how long it lingers. Priests and scribes make careful notes on clay or papyrus, marking high water against the rising sun. These measurements will inform planting schedules for years to come, because a season misjudged can lead to famine. Every farmer, every family, participates in this quiet, slow system of record keeping, even if they do not hold the clay themselves. Once the flood recedes, leaving behind dark, fertile silt, the planting season begins. You wade into the wet fields, scattering seeds by hand. Barley, wheat, and flax are the most common crops. Each seed must fall at the right depth, in soil softened by the flood, otherwise it will fail to germinate. Planting is repetitive, almost hypnotic work. Bend, scatter, step, bend again, scatter, step again. The rhythm of labor mirrors the rhythm of the river itself. The days that follow are slow. You watch sprouts emerge, counting leaves and measuring growth. You adjust irrigation channels to distribute the leftover water evenly. You keep birds from eating seeds. You repair fences. Every task is mundane, yet essential. Your life is dominated by the expectation of small, almost imperceptible changes in the plants you planted. Every inch of growth matters. Socially, the season is communal. Water management requires cooperation. Fields too close to one another risk flooding if embankments fail. Villagers must share labor and knowledge. Festivals exist, but they are never mere celebration. They are markers of relief, brief respites from the monotony of waiting and labor. You observe the cycles, participate in the rituals, and internalize the idea that survival depends on patience as much as skill. Life along the Nile also teaches resilience through boredom. The flood comes every year, largely predictable yet never perfectly so. Too little, and crops fail. Too much, and homes collapse. Inhabitants of the river valley learn the value of repetition, observation, and timing. The entire year is an exercise in quiet, deliberate endurance. The flood has receded. The mud is thick beneath your feet, dark and fertile, smelling faintly of water and clay. Your sandals, or bare feet, depending on your rank, sink slightly with each step. You are no longer waiting for the river, but the season is far from over. Now begins the slow, repetitive, and patient work of turning floodplain into harvestable fields. Planting is painstaking. Seeds must be spaced carefully. Too crowded, and they will choke each other. Too sparse, and land is wasted. You bend over, scattering tiny grains into the silt, feeling the rhythm of your movements match the rhythm of the slow-moving river that just left its mark. For hours you repeat the same motions, your arms growing tired, your eyes tracking the soil, checking for irregularities. Even the smallest irregularity, a patch too dry, too wet, or too uneven, can reduce the yield. Irrigation is a constant companion. Canals are channels of life, requiring frequent inspection. Small leaks must be patched. Walls reinforced. Water must be measured, directed, diverted. A miscalculation could flood a neighbor's field, or leave your own parched. The Nile has taught that control is an illusion, but effort still matters. The farmer's daily rituals involve endless observation, adjustment, and care. Communities revolve around these repetitive tasks. Farmers work alongside family members, neighbors, and occasionally laborers employed by local temples or overseers. The labor is dull, often physically draining, but there is quiet satisfaction in seeing sprouts emerge, stretching pale green from the mud. Children, who accompany adults to the fields, learn through mimicry. They carry water, chase birds, repair small embankments. Each day is an education in patience, endurance, and the necessity of minor adjustments. Yet the Nile's blessings are accompanied by social structures as rigid as the irrigation channels themselves. Priests and scribes monitor the calendar and the flood history. The timing of festivals, seed planting, and taxes depends on their observations. Grain storage is closely supervised. This is not arbitrary oversight. Mismanagement of grain can lead to famine or unrest. The season imposes hierarchy and bureaucracy, all born from necessity rather than ambition. Meals remain simple, practical, and repetitive. Bread, porridge, and occasionally fish from the river dominate diets. Meat is rare, reserved for those with status or special occasions. Food is functional, designed to sustain repetitive labor rather than delight. The farmer's day is structured by tasks, not desires, and the river dictates the schedule more than any sun or clock. Even in good years, challenges abound. Pests appear, sometimes in waves so large they can consume young shoots in hours. Weeds sprout where seeds are not intended, requiring repeated attention. Fields that were carefully planted may need constant maintenance to ensure the crops survive. A single mistake, a misjudged canal, a patch of overwatered land, can ripple across the season's work. Religious life intertwines with agriculture seamlessly. Temples, monuments, and rituals are not merely symbolic, they are functional. Offerings to the river god Hapi or other deities are meant to ensure predictable flooding, protect against disease, and sustain communal well-being. Every ceremony has its place within the agricultural calendar, marking points of anxiety and relief. In this way, routine, observation, and faith merge into a life measured in repetition, rather than surprise. As the weeks pass, sprouts grow into young stalks. Labor becomes lighter in some ways, heavier in others. The repetitive bending and scattering of seeds transforms into monitoring irrigation, clearing weeds, and maintaining storage pits. Even as your work appears less dramatic, the subtleties become more important. Timing, consistency, and attention to minute changes decide survival. By the end of this period, the harvest is still months away. You have invested weeks of labor with no immediate reward. You have survived minor setbacks and adjusted to small errors. And still, the season is fragile. A sudden change, a delayed flood next year, an unexpected drought, a disease affecting crops, could undo months of painstaking effort. You step into a dense, humid jungle. The air is thick, heavy with the scent of earth, leaves, and moisture. Light filters in through high canopies, casting uneven shadows across the forest floor. You hear the distant hum of insects, the occasional rustle of a monkey, and the constant drip of water from leaves. Somewhere beneath this canopy, the ancestors of the Maya carved their lives into the rhythm of the seasons. Farming here is not dictated by rivers or plains. It is dictated by the sun, the rain, and the patterns of a forest that is both nurturing and hostile. The Maya were master observers of these patterns. They noticed when the first rains appeared after the dry season, when the soil softened, when small plants pushed through the mulch-covered ground. These were signs that the next planting season had arrived. The jungle is fertile, yet dangerous. Soil that is rich on the surface is quickly leached of nutrients by frequent rains. Fields left fallow for a single season may need careful clearing before they can yield again. Farmers use a system called milpa, a rotating plot where land is cleared, burned, and planted with a mix of maize, beans, and squash. This combination provides nutrition, supports the soil, and ensures that no single crop depletes the earth entirely. Planting is deliberate and repetitive. Corn seeds are pressed into small mounds of earth, spaced evenly to allow room for stalks to grow tall. Beans are planted nearby to climb the stalks later, and squash spreads low, shading the soil and reducing weed growth. Every planting decision is the result of careful observation, passed down through generations. Timing is crucial. Too early, and seedlings drown in heavy rains; too late, and the soil dries or pests consume the tender shoots. The Maya do not measure time as we do. They record it in cycles, calendars, and celestial movements. Observing the sun, the moon, Venus, and other stars, they predict the rainy and dry seasons, the ideal planting times, and even the timing of communal festivals. Farmers consult priests and scribes who maintain these records in codices and carvings. These observations dictate the rhythm of life, not just in agriculture but in social and religious activities as well. Labor is communal. Families clear the forest, plant seeds, maintain canals, and guard fields against pests or wild animals. Each member has a role, often dictated by age or strength. Children carry water or small tools, learning the patterns of planting and growth. Adults bend, dig, and scatter seeds, returning to the same tasks each day for weeks. The work is monotonous, exhausting, and precise, designed to yield survival rather than wealth. Diet is tied closely to the cycles of the milpa. Corn is ground into masa for tortillas, beans provide protein, and squash nourishes with vitamins and fiber. Other foods, avocado, chili, cacao, supplement the diet but remain seasonal or rare. Food itself becomes a calendar. When certain crops ripen, people know which season has arrived, and rituals are scheduled to coincide with these natural markers. Rituals are embedded in farming, not separate from it. Offerings are made to gods of rain, maize, and fertility, asking for predictable rainfall and protection from pests or disease. These rituals are quiet, methodical, and repetitive, matching the rhythms of planting, tending, and harvesting. They are not grand spectacles, they are subtle acknowledgments of dependence on forces beyond human control. Even within the ordered cycles of the milpa, challenges persist. Heavy rains can wash away seeds. Droughts can parch the soil. Insects and rodents threaten to undo weeks of labor. Observational records help, but they cannot guarantee success. Every year, every planting, is a test of patience, endurance, and attentiveness. By the time seedlings push through the soil, you have internalized the rhythm of this life. You understand that survival depends on careful timing, collective effort, and faithful observation of natural patterns. Yet, even with all knowledge and all labor, uncertainty persists. The green shoots of maize, beans, and squash have emerged from the carefully tended mounds. They sway gently under the filtered sunlight of the canopy. The first stage of growth is over, but the Maya farming season is only just beginning. Now begins the long, repetitive work of nurturing these crops to maturity, while also interpreting the slow patterns of the sun, the rain, and the forest itself. Daily life is quiet, structured, and physically demanding. You wake with the first light of dawn, stepping carefully over moist soil and fallen leaves. Tools are simple: digging sticks, small wooden hoes, baskets for carrying seeds, and stones for grinding. Each movement is deliberate. You bend, press, scatter, and cover, checking each mound for uniformity. Small errors can affect yields later, so attention to detail dominates the rhythm of the day. The milpa system encourages patience. Land that has been cleared is never fully predictable. Some areas retain fertility longer, others lose nutrients rapidly. Weeds must be removed consistently. Water channels, small ditches dug to guide rainwater, require inspection after each shower. Every day involves repetition, correction, and constant vigilance. Even minor mistakes, a missed weed, a shallow planting hole, can ripple across the entire season. Socially, farming is communal, intertwined with hierarchy and ritual. Families collaborate in planting and tending. Elders direct work based on accumulated knowledge, passing instructions to younger members. Priests and scribes maintain calendars that dictate planting times, rituals, and festivals. Observation of celestial events informs irrigation schedules and soil preparation. Every action, every pause, is connected to a greater system that blends labor, timekeeping, and belief. Meals remain practical, designed for endurance rather than indulgence. Corn tortillas, boiled beans, squash, and occasional fruits sustain the laborers. Protein comes from beans and small game. Famine is a constant concern if a single stage of the cycle falters. This monotony in diet mirrors the monotony of labor itself, a slow, predictable rhythm that is necessary for survival. The Maya also contend with the unpredictability of the jungle. Pests, locusts, rodents, and insects threaten to undo weeks of work. Heavy rains can wash away mounds. Dry spells can parch soil before the roots take hold. Even with the careful application of knowledge, these natural variables remain largely outside human control. Patience, observation, and repetition become essential survival tools. Rituals are embedded seamlessly into labor. Offerings of maize, cacao, and other crops are made to gods of rain, sun, and fertility. Observations of the stars dictate the timing of these offerings. Labor and ritual are not separate. They are part of a single cycle. Preparing a field, planting seeds, and performing ceremonies are interwoven, each supporting the other. This creates a life where repetition is not just necessary, it is sacred. As the season progresses, small adjustments become critical. If rain comes early, seedlings may need partial shading. If pests appear, children are sent to scare them away or remove infested plants. If soil moisture varies, ditches are adjusted. Every day brings subtle decisions that test knowledge and patience. This careful observation is what distinguishes survival from failure. Even with these routines, uncertainty persists. Years of records, observation, and careful planning cannot fully prevent crop loss. One season of drought, one unanticipated insect outbreak, one mistake in timing can undermine months of repetitive work. The cycle is fragile, yet the Maya continue it, year after year, generation after generation, trusting that discipline, patience, and observation will carry them through. You find yourself standing at the edge of a wide, muddy field. Water pools between the small ridges of earth, reflecting the pale morning sun. In the distance, faint hills rise, mist drifting across them, but your world is flat, watery, and alive with small sounds, the croak of frogs, the murmur of insects, the splash of water as it seeps between ridges. This is the cradle of early rice farming in ancient China, where life is measured in the slow, deliberate cycles of water and seed. Rice is demanding. It cannot grow in dry, cracked soil like wheat or barley. It requires flooded fields, carefully leveled land, and constant attention to water management. Seasons are not just periods of planting and harvest, they are cycles of moisture, temperature, and careful observation. You do not simply plant seeds and wait, you manage the environment around the plants, guiding water into channels, ensuring it does not stagnate, and keeping soil soft enough for roots to grow. Before planting begins, preparation consumes weeks. Fields must be cleared of weeds and debris. Mud is worked into soft ridges for seedlings. Irrigation channels are dug or repaired, often relying on water lifted from rivers using simple scoops or bamboo pipes. Communities organize this labor collectively, because the effort of a single family alone cannot manage large fields. Timing is critical. Seedlings transplanted too early will drown in unseasonable rains, while delays risk damage from dry spells or pests. Seedlings are often started in small nurseries, crowded together in shallow water. You tend these tiny plants, keeping them moist, protected, and evenly spaced. After weeks, they are ready for transplantation, a repetitive process that occupies much of the family labor. Bending in shallow water, you lift seedlings carefully, pressing them into the prepared ridges of the field. This motion, repeated thousands of times, becomes a rhythm of survival, a dance dictated by the season rather than personal preference. Life in these fields is slow, quiet, and constant. Children accompany adults, carrying small bundles of seedlings or fetching water. Food is simple: rice porridge, vegetables, occasional fish from nearby streams. Meals are functional, designed to sustain repetitive labor rather than delight the senses. Hunger is never far from thought, especially in years when water levels fluctuate unpredictably. The long rice year is measured not by months, but by stages of growth. You watch seedlings establish roots, leaves unfurl, and stalks lengthen. You monitor water levels carefully, ensuring that the balance between flooding and drainage supports steady growth. Each day is similar to the last: bend, plant, adjust, observe, repair. Repetition is survival. Weather dictates the rhythm as much as labor. Monsoon rains arrive predictably, yet their intensity varies. Too much rain floods fields completely, drowning young plants. Too little, and soil dries, roots fail, and crops wither. Over centuries, communities develop subtle methods of tracking rainfall, soil moisture, and seasonal shifts. Knowledge is passed down orally or through simple markings. The farming season becomes a calendar of observation, its rules enforced by necessity rather than law. Pests and disease are constant, though less dramatic than floods or droughts. Small insects nibble leaves. Fungi creep into waterlogged soil. Vigilance, repetition, and community cooperation are the only defenses. Every day, you must check, adjust, and sometimes accept minor losses, knowing that perfection is impossible. Even within these strict routines, moments of quiet reflection occur. Watching seedlings sway in the gentle breeze, you sense the invisible patterns of water, sun, and soil. You recognize that survival requires patience more than strength, attention more than speed. The farming season is a teacher of endurance, repetition, and cautious optimism. The transplanted seedlings sway gently in shallow water, a pale green sea of possibilities stretching across the landscape. You move among them, stepping carefully to avoid compacting the mud. Your hands are wet, sticky with soil, and your clothes cling to your body, heavy from humidity. This is a life dominated by repetition, where each day is almost identical to the last, and yet the season's outcome depends entirely on your attentiveness. Water is the constant companion of the rice farmer. It must be managed, measured, and distributed carefully. Flood the fields too deeply, and the young plants drown. Let it recede too quickly, and roots dry, causing irreversible damage. Every ridge, every channel, every spillway is part of a careful system honed over generations. Farmers walk along the channels, adjusting small gates, repairing leaks, moving earth. The work is painstaking, dull, and repetitive, but it is necessary for survival. Children, often barefoot, follow adults into the fields. Their tasks are minor, carrying seedlings, scaring birds, fetching water, but through repetition they learn the subtle patterns of the season. Adults bend, lift, and adjust water levels, repeating movements thousands of times over days and weeks. Each task, however tedious, is essential. Precision, patience, and endurance dominate every motion. The rice fields are rarely quiet. The hum of insects, the splash of water, and the occasional call of a bird fill the air. Yet these sounds are part of the rhythm, part of the season's cadence. Even work itself has a rhythm: planting, adjusting, observing, repairing, bending, repeating. No single day is exceptional. The power of the season lies in consistent, patient effort. Pests present constant minor challenges. Tiny insects nibble leaves, fungi develop in stagnant water, and occasional rodents invade the ridges. Nothing is dramatic or catastrophic yet, but persistent attention is required. Fields are inspected daily. Channels are cleaned, plants are spaced and pruned. Small corrections prevent large failures later. The season teaches that survival comes not from dramatic actions, but from steady, repetitive care. Meals during this period are simple and functional: rice porridge, some vegetables, perhaps a fish caught from nearby streams or ponds. Food is consumed to sustain labor, not to provide pleasure. Even festivals and rituals are practical. Offerings are made to water spirits, rice deities, or ancestors, in hopes of ensuring steady rainfall and protection against pests. Rituals mirror labor, repetitive, predictable, and intertwined with daily work. The seasonal calendar is measured in subtle changes: the height of seedlings, the clarity of the water, the weight of clouds, the timing of monsoon rains. Observation is the primary tool of survival. Priests, elders, or experienced farmers interpret signs from nature and past experience. Each decision, when to thin seedlings, when to adjust water, when to repair channels, is grounded in careful observation and centuries of accumulated knowledge. Even small successes are incremental. One ridge of well-watered rice, one canal repaired, one pest removed. These are victories that may determine survival months later. No single event is decisive, the season is cumulative. Patience and repetition, repeated thousands of times, shape the ultimate outcome. Yet uncertainty persists. Floods may arrive too early or too late. Droughts may parch the fields unexpectedly. Fungal infections or insects can strike with little warning. The season is fragile, and every small adjustment counts. Even the most attentive laborers cannot fully control the environment. They can only manage it carefully, consistently, and patiently. You step onto a rocky, sun-baked hillside overlooking the deep blue of the Aegean Sea. The wind is constant, carrying salt from the waves below and stirring the sparse grasses that cling to cracks in the limestone. The earth beneath your feet is uneven, often shallow, and sometimes so rocky that planting seems almost impossible. Yet here, thousands of years ago, people learned to cultivate olives and wheat, guided not by rivers or heavy rain, but by the slow rhythms of sun, soil, and wind. Agriculture in ancient Greece is defined by limitation. Soil is poor, water is scarce, and the terrain is unforgiving. Wheat grows in the few fertile plains or terraces carved into hillsides. Olives, hardier and more resilient, dominate the landscape. They cling to rocky slopes, surviving where other plants would fail. Farming here is less about abundance and more about careful management of scarce resources. The year is measured by seasons rather than months. Winter brings rain, but rarely enough to saturate the soil. Spring is mild, with warmer temperatures and occasional storms. Summer is long and dry, requiring careful conservation of water and attention to soil moisture. Fall is harvest season, and often the only moment when months of patience pay off. Planting wheat is repetitive but crucial. Fields are plowed with wooden plows drawn by oxen or donkeys. Seeds are scattered by hand in even rows, pressed into the soil with careful attention. Too deep, and seedlings fail to emerge. Too shallow, and they dry under the summer sun. Every ridge, every furrow, is the result of observation, labor, and careful timing. Olive trees follow a different rhythm. They are planted on terraces to prevent soil erosion, often on land that seems unusable for other crops. Pruning is essential, requiring repetition year after year to ensure healthy growth. Fruit is slow to appear, sometimes taking decades, yet patience is rewarded with durable oil, used for food, lighting, and trade. Labor for olives is repetitive, constant, and intertwined with ritual. Offerings to gods ensure protection against frost, pests, and disease. Daily life in the fields is quiet, physically demanding, and full of repetition. You rise at dawn, walk across uneven terrain, tend crops, adjust irrigation channels when possible, repair terraces, and guard fields from birds or goats. Meals are modest, bread made from wheat, olives, figs, occasional vegetables, and rarely meat. Food sustains work, rather than delighting the senses. Community cooperation is limited but essential. Terraces require labor beyond the capacity of a single household. Villagers work together to move stones, maintain walls, and manage shared water channels. Even small errors, a collapsed terrace, a blocked channel, a misjudged irrigation schedule, can ripple across the season's work. Survival depends on consistency, attention, and quiet endurance. The wind is a subtle but constant factor. It dries soil, shifts seeds, and influences planting schedules. Farmers observe it carefully, adjusting activities based on subtle changes in its direction and strength. Rainfall is unpredictable, irrigation is minimal. The season demands patience, observation, and constant correction. Rituals and festivals mark points of relief and reflection. Offerings to Demeter, goddess of grain, and other deities coincide with planting and harvest. They are not dramatic celebrations but measured acknowledgments of dependence on forces beyond human control. Labor, observation, and ritual are deeply intertwined, creating a rhythm that guides daily life, year after year. Even with careful observation and effort, uncertainty persists. Drought, frost, pests, or disease can undo months of work. Each season is fragile, its success resting on countless small, repetitive actions performed correctly and consistently. The rhythm of labor is the rhythm of survival, and mastery comes only from patience and careful observation. The terraces stretch before you, a patchwork of stone, soil, and plants clinging stubbornly to the hillside. Your hands are rough from months of labor, moving stones, repairing walls, adjusting irrigation channels, and bending repeatedly to tend young shoots. Life here is measured in small, repetitive actions, each essential for the survival of the next harvest. Wheat fields require constant observation. You check soil moisture carefully, inspecting for dryness in shallow furrows and sogginess in low-lying patches. Birds threaten the seedlings, pecking at kernels before they germinate. You walk slowly along the rows, scattering seeds, adjusting irrigation, and sometimes replacing lost plants. The work is monotonous, yet attention to minute detail ensures the survival of the harvest. Olive trees demand a different rhythm. Each tree must be pruned carefully, removing old branches and directing growth to maximize sunlight and air circulation. Every cut is deliberate. Too much pruning weakens the tree, too little reduces yield. The repetitive nature of this work mirrors the rhythm of the seasons themselves. Prune in late winter, observe growth in spring, protect from pests in summer, and harvest fruit in late fall. Water management is crucial, even though rainfall is limited. Small channels guide rainwater to terraces and fields. Leaks, blockages, or collapsed walls are corrected immediately, as even minor mismanagement can reduce productivity. Each adjustment is minor, almost invisible, yet collectively determines survival. You check channels daily, repair damaged embankments, and reroute water as needed. Community cooperation continues to shape the season. Large terraces or shared olive groves require labor from several households. Neighbors work together, moving stones, sharing tools, and supervising irrigation. Mistakes by one household can affect the productivity of others. The social rhythm of labor is as important as the natural rhythm of planting and growth. Meals remain modest, functional, and repetitive. Bread made from wheat, olives, figs, and occasional vegetables or legumes. Meat is rare and usually reserved for special occasions. Food sustains labor rather than providing pleasure, reinforcing the season's slow, steady, and repetitive tempo. Even small threats require constant attention. Pests, drought, or early frost can undermine weeks of careful labor. You inspect trees for disease, check soil moisture, remove weeds, and monitor for erosion. Each day's repetitive actions build slowly toward a harvest that will determine survival. Success depends on patience, consistency, and observation. Religious rituals are tightly woven into agricultural labor. Offerings to Demeter, Persephone, or local spirits coincide with planting, pruning, and harvest. These are measured, modest rituals, gifts of grain, small ceremonies, prayers. They reflect dependence on natural forces and the season's rhythm rather than any desire for spectacle. Labor and ritual reinforce one another, creating a life defined by repetition, attention, and endurance. The season stretches for months. Wheat grows slowly under the sun. Olive trees mature even more slowly, their fruit developing over years. Work is repetitive and ongoing, punctuated only by small victories, a repaired terrace, a well-watered row, a pest removed. The rhythm is constant, the tasks mundane, but their cumulative effect ensures survival. Yet uncertainty persists. Rainfall may fail, wind may erode terraces, or disease may strike unexpectedly. The season is fragile. Despite careful planning and labor, nature remains unpredictable. Each step, each adjustment, each repeated action matters, yet none guarantees success. You are standing in a gentle valley somewhere in central Italy, where the hills roll softly into fertile plains. The sun is warm but not harsh, and the air carries the faint scent of tilled earth and drying hay. All around you, small plots of land stretch toward the horizon, separated by dirt paths and low stone walls. This is the Roman countryside, and here, the rhythm of life is dictated entirely by the seasons of farming. In Rome, agriculture is as much a social institution as an economic one. The farmer's year is measured not by holidays or leisure but by the meticulous cycle of tasks required to sustain life and supply cities. Wheat, barley, grapes, and olives dominate the fields, each crop with its own timetable, each demanding repetition and attention. There is little variation in the work, and no day is truly free from labor. The year begins with plowing. Heavy wooden plows, often pulled by oxen, are drawn through damp soil. Dust and mud cling to your hands and feet as you guide the animals, ensuring that furrows are even and deep enough to hold seeds. Plowing is a repetitive, exhausting task, yet essential. Poorly turned soil reduces yield, allowing weeds to grow or seeds to rot. The rhythm of bending, guiding, and adjusting continues until every acre is prepared. Planting follows immediately. Seeds are scattered evenly across the furrows, pressed lightly into the earth. Wheat and barley dominate, though some fields are prepared for beans or vegetables. Planting is repetitive work that demands focus, spacing, depth, and even coverage determine the success of the harvest months later. Mistakes are invisible now but can be disastrous later. Irrigation is limited compared to other civilizations, but rainfall is unpredictable. Farmers watch the sky carefully, noting clouds and wind, preparing to move water where it is needed most. Ditches and channels are checked daily, reinforced when necessary. The land itself requires constant attention. Even small errors, a blocked channel, a collapsed embankment, or uneven furrows, can affect the entire season. Daily life is repetitive and structured. Farmers rise before dawn and work until dusk. with few breaks. Meals are modest: bread, porridge, cheese, olives. Meat is rare, reserved for special occasions or wealthier households. Food is functional, sustaining labor rather than providing enjoyment. Even social gatherings and festivals are tied to agricultural cycles, scheduled to coincide with planting, pruning, or harvest. Children and family members contribute. Boys follow adults to plow or plant. Girls tend gardens, carry water, and help with storage. Everyone participates in the rhythm of the season, learning patience, observation, and endurance through repetition. The farming season teaches that labor is constant, attention to detail is vital, and survival depends on following the established cycle. Harvest is a moment of intense, focused labor. Fields that have been tended for months suddenly demand everyone's attention. Crops are cut with sickles, bundled, and carried to storage. Grain is dried, threshed, and stored in granaries. Olive trees are picked slowly, their fruit pressed for oil. Every step is repetitive and exhausting, yet essential for survival. Religion is deeply intertwined with agriculture. Offerings to Ceres, goddess of grain, and other deities mark planting and harvest. Ceremonies are measured and predictable, reinforcing the connection between human labor and divine favor. These rituals are not spectacular but functional, small acts of devotion meant to protect crops and ensure continuity of the season. Even in years of success, uncertainty is never far away. Drought, pests, disease, or flooding can wipe out months of labor. The farming season demands constant attention, and even careful planning cannot guarantee a positive outcome. Each year is a cycle of effort, observation, and endurance, repeated endlessly across generations. The fields stretch before you, a patchwork of wheat, barley, and olive groves, each demanding careful attention. You move through the soil, bend over the young plants, feeling the rhythm of your labor settle into your muscles. Each day is structured, repetitive, and exhausting, yet every motion matters. The season is slow but relentless, demanding patience, endurance, and constant observation. Water management is a subtle art in the Roman countryside. Irrigation is limited, yet ditches, small aqueducts, and rainwater retention systems must be monitored. You walk along these channels, checking for blockages, leaks, or soil erosion. Even minor errors can lead to localized flooding or drought stress in fields, so your attention must never waver. This daily repetition is physically unremarkable, but it is essential. Each correction may decide the difference between survival and loss. Weeds, pests, and small animals are constant challenges. Birds peck at emerging seedlings, rodents tunnel through soil, and insects nibble leaves. You spend hours monitoring, removing threats, and reinforcing defenses. Nothing is dramatic, yet the monotony of vigilance is crucial. Each day's repetition builds slowly toward a harvest that is never guaranteed. Olive trees, in contrast to annual crops, demand long-term attention. Pruning is methodical, old or diseased branches removed, growth directed toward sunlight, leaves trimmed to improve air circulation. Fruit is slow to mature, sometimes taking decades for trees to reach peak production. This work is repetitive, almost hypnotic, requiring years of patience and consistent care. Meals are functional and modest, reflecting the priorities of labor. Bread, porridge, cheese, and olives sustain the body rather than delight the senses. Even festivals and religious observances are intertwined with agricultural work. Offerings to Ceres or other agricultural deities coincide with planting, pruning, and harvest. These rituals are predictable, measured, and practical, reinforcing the human connection to seasonal cycles. Children participate from an early age. Boys learn to plow and plant. Girls help carry water and tend smaller plots. Learning comes through repetition, observing elders, mimicking actions, and gradually mastering the rhythms of the land. The season teaches endurance, attention to detail, and patient observation. Each individual contributes to the slow, collective rhythm that sustains the community. Despite the structure, uncertainty always lurks. Floods, droughts, locusts, and disease can undo months of careful labor. Years of observation and experience provide guidance, but no skill can fully control nature. Each step of labor is an exercise in patience, precision, and resilience. The farmer's calendar is not a schedule for leisure, it is a framework for survival. Small victories mark progress. A well-watered furrow, a successfully transplanted crop, a repaired terrace. These tiny, repetitive successes accumulate, building toward the harvest. The rhythm of labor mirrors the slow, measured passage of the seasons themselves, predictable, monotonous, yet fragile. By mid-season, the physical toll of repetition is evident. Blisters, sore muscles, and exhaustion are constant companions. Yet the mind adapts. Repetition becomes meditation. Observation sharpens. Attention to detail deepens. The farmer learns to detect subtle changes in soil, weather, and plant health, gaining insight that is invisible to outsiders but vital to survival. And yet, even with centuries of experience, uncertainty persists. Weather patterns can shift unexpectedly. Pests and disease may strike suddenly. Fields may fail despite meticulous care. Each year, the season tests patience, endurance, and skill, reminding you that survival is never guaranteed. You step onto a windswept plain in northern Europe. The sky is gray, heavy with clouds, and the air carries a chill even as the sun rises. The ground beneath your feet is uneven, sometimes muddy from melted snow, sometimes frozen hard. This is the medieval European countryside, where life revolves around barley fields, pastures, and the slow rhythm of frost and thaw. Survival depends on careful observation of the seasons, patient labor, and endurance through months of repetition. Farming in this land is constrained by climate. Winters are long and harsh, limiting what can be planted or harvested. Barley is resilient, able to survive cold soil and short growing seasons, but wheat is more delicate. Animals, cattle, sheep, goats, are both laborers and sources of food. They must be fed carefully, sheltered from frost, and tended daily, even when humans themselves are cold, hungry, and exhausted. The year begins with the thaw. Snow melts and softens the soil. Fields must be inspected for damage from frost or flood, ditches repaired, and pastures cleared. Tools are checked and repaired. The labor is repetitive and slow, but essential. One misstep can delay planting and reduce yield. Farmers, accustomed to repetition, move steadily, performing the same motions hour after hour, digging, leveling, repairing, and preparing. Planting is precise. Barley seeds are scattered evenly, pressed lightly into soil, and protected from wind, frost, and birds. Children follow adults, learning the rhythm of the season by carrying water, chasing birds, and mimicking tasks. Labor is social, physical, and continuous, linking families and communities in a shared cycle of survival. Water management is rudimentary but crucial. Streams, ditches, and small ponds are monitored. Excess water can drown seedlings, while too little can dry soil and stunt growth. The farmer's calendar is based on observation, the thaw of ice, the first appearance of green shoots, and subtle changes in weather patterns dictate when to plant, tend, and harvest. Meals are functional: coarse bread, porridge, occasional cheese, and whatever meat is available. Food sustains labor rather than pleasure. Every day blends into the next. Rise at dawn, work the soil, check irrigation, tend animals, repair tools, and repeat. The rhythm is monotonous, almost hypnotic, but it is necessary for survival. Animals require constant attention. Cattle graze in pastures, needing guidance to prevent overgrazing. Sheep and goats are herded and protected from predators. Even during planting, tending livestock is a daily, repetitive necessity. Their health directly influences food security. Even small errors have cumulative consequences. A misjudged frost, delayed planting, or poorly maintained ditch can reduce harvest. In years of harsh weather, crops fail entirely. Communities develop cooperative strategies, sharing labor, pooling grain, and managing resources collectively. Survival depends on adherence to the rhythm of the season, repetition, and careful observation. Rituals mark moments of relief and reflection. Saints' days, local festivals, and religious observances coincide with planting and harvest. They are modest, functional, and repetitive, reinforcing the rhythm of work and the connection between humans and forces beyond their control. The thaw has come, yet the ground remains uneven, wet, and cold beneath your feet. You move deliberately through the barley fields, bending repeatedly to inspect seedlings, check soil moisture, and clear debris from small irrigation ditches. Labor dominates every hour of the day. Repetition is not monotony, it is survival. Each task, no matter how dull, is essential to sustaining life in a climate that offers no forgiveness. Water management is constant. Ditches must carry meltwater from higher ground into the fields, but overflow can be catastrophic. Small embankments are reinforced with mud and straw. You check each channel carefully, walking its length daily to ensure the slow movement of water matches the needs of the crops. Too much water drowns seedlings, too little starves them. Every adjustment is small, precise, and necessary. Barley requires constant attention. You inspect for uneven germination, signs of pests, and water stress. Birds threaten the young shoots, insects nibble leaves, and occasional frost can damage growth overnight. Children, learning the rhythm of life, help carry seedlings, repair small embankments, or drive birds away. Their labor is minor, yet every small effort contributes to the larger cycle of survival. Animals demand attention alongside crops. Cattle must graze carefully to avoid stripping pastures too early. Sheep and goats must be moved between fields and pens, and livestock shelters require constant repair and replenishment. Their health is directly tied to survival. A single lost animal can reduce food security for a family or community. This dual responsibility, tending both crops and livestock, makes the work continuous, repetitive, and physically exhausting. Meals sustain labor rather than delight. Coarse bread, porridge, cheese, and occasionally salted meat or fish provide energy to endure long days of bending, lifting, and walking across muddy fields. Eating is functional, designed to maintain strength and alertness, rather than pleasure. Every day blends into the next, a slow cadence of effort, observation, and care. Even small errors can accumulate into disaster. A blocked ditch can flood an entire field. Overgrazing reduces pasture for livestock. Failing to remove weeds or pests allows them to multiply. Repetition is your shield against these threats. Daily vigilance, small corrections, and patient observation determine whether months of labor will produce food or loss. Rituals reinforce the rhythm of labor. Saints' days and local festivals mark planting, tending, and harvest, though they are modest, functional, and tightly tied to survival. Offerings, prayers, and communal gatherings reinforce the social cohesion necessary for shared labor, ensuring that the repetitive tasks of farming are supported by community structure and tradition. Despite careful attention, uncertainty never disappears. Frost can arrive suddenly, destroying seedlings. Heavy rain can flood fields, washing away months of work. Insect infestations or livestock disease can strike without warning. Even the most disciplined laborer cannot control these variables entirely. All one can do is respond carefully and consistently, minimizing losses wherever possible. Small successes are cumulative. A healthy row of barley, a repaired fence, a well-watered pasture, these victories are subtle, yet vital. They represent the quiet accumulation of careful labor, the patient observation of environmental patterns, and the endurance of repeated effort. The rhythm of the season is slow, unremarkable, and essential. By the mid-season point, you are deeply familiar with the landscape, the soil, the drainage patterns, the behavior of animals, and the subtle cues of weather. Observation becomes instinct, repetition becomes meditation, and the monotony of work develops into a form of quiet mastery. Yet the fragility of the system is never far from mind. One sudden frost, one flood, one pest outbreak can undo weeks of careful labor. You are standing on a steep mountainside, high in the Andes. The air is thin and crisp, carrying the scent of wet stone and fertile soil. Below, terraces carved into the mountainside form long, narrow steps, each filled with shallow pools of water, ready for rice planting. The work here is repetitive, careful, and slow, dictated by altitude, water flow, and seasonal patterns. Survival depends on attention to minute details, patient labor, and adherence to the natural rhythm of the land. The terraces are a marvel of planning, yet they demand constant maintenance. Stone walls must be reinforced to prevent collapse. Water channels must be clear, allowing irrigation from distant streams to flow evenly across each terrace. Even a small misalignment can flood a terrace or leave it dry, threatening weeks of careful labor. Each adjustment requires patience, observation, and repetition. Rice is planted in small seedlings, started in nursery plots before being transplanted into terraces. You bend over, placing each tiny plant carefully into mud, ensuring even spacing. Every movement is repeated thousands of times over hours. The monotony is broken only by occasional birds or wind rustling through the terraces, yet each repetition contributes directly to the survival of the community. Children accompany adults to the terraces, carrying small bundles of seedlings, fetching water, or helping clear debris from channels. Through repetition, they learn the rhythm of cultivation, planting, observing, adjusting, and repairing. Labor is both physical and educational, preparing the next generation for survival in an environment that allows no mistakes. Meals are modest but sustaining. Maize, tubers, beans, and occasionally fish from nearby rivers provide energy for long days of bending, lifting, and walking along narrow terraces. Food is functional rather than pleasurable, reflecting the practical priorities of survival. Water management dominates life in these highlands. Irrigation channels must be monitored constantly. Even small leaks or blockages can reduce yield significantly. The movement of water is subtle and slow. Understanding it requires repeated observation over weeks and months. Farmers walk along channels daily, adjusting gates and mounds of soil to direct flow precisely. Pests, while less dramatic than floods or landslides, still demand attention. Insects nibble seedlings. Birds attempt to eat grains. Occasional small rodents threaten both crops and irrigation channels. Each day requires vigilance, minor corrections, and repeated action. Patience is not optional, it is a survival skill. Even within carefully maintained terraces, uncertainty persists. Landslides, sudden storms, or unexpected droughts can undo months of labor. Each season is a delicate balance, requiring precise repetition, patient observation, and constant adjustment. Farmers accept that effort does not guarantee success, but that discipline and persistence maximize their chances. Rituals mark important points in the agricultural cycle. Offerings to mountain spirits, water deities, or ancestors coincide with planting and harvest. These acts are quiet, functional, and repetitive, reinforcing the connection between human labor and natural forces. Work and ritual become intertwined, shaping the rhythm of life. The terraces rise steeply before you, a layered landscape of water, soil, and stone. Each step demands careful attention. Your hands are wet and muddy as you adjust seedlings, reinforce stone walls, and guide water into pools. Labor here is repetitive and constant. Every movement, bending, pressing, adjusting, is performed hundreds of times daily. The survival of the community depends on this persistence. Water management dominates your day. Irrigation channels, sourced from streams far above, must carry water evenly across every terrace. A small blockage can flood one pool and leave another dry. You walk along each channel daily, checking flow, moving stones, and filling small gaps with mud. The work is monotonous, slow, and precise. Yet without it, the carefully planted rice would fail. Rice seedlings are tender. You bend repeatedly, pressing each into the soft, wet soil, ensuring even spacing to allow sunlight, water, and air to reach every plant. Children follow, carrying small bundles of seedlings or clearing debris. Through repetition, they learn not just the technique but the rhythm of the season itself. Plant, observe, adjust, repair, repeat. Labor is education as well as survival. The terraces are vulnerable. Heavy rains threaten to erode walls, dislodge seedlings, and overwhelm channels. Landslides can erase entire plots in minutes. You inspect every terrace, reinforcing walls, filling cracks, and repairing any damage. These actions are minor individually, yet collectively they protect months of patient effort. Repetition is both the method and the safeguard. Pests are a quieter threat but no less persistent. Birds peck at seedlings, insects nibble leaves, and rodents sometimes invade channels or fields. Daily observation allows you to respond immediately. Birds are scared away, insects removed, channels reinforced. Each small, repetitive action accumulates into the survival of the harvest. Food sustains this labor. Maize, potatoes, beans, and occasional fish provide energy for long, physically demanding days. Meals are simple and functional, designed to maintain endurance rather than delight. Even festivals or ritual offerings, gifts to water spirits, mountain deities, or ancestors, are modest, reinforcing the rhythm of labor and survival. Work and ritual intertwine, forming a continuous cycle of attention, repetition, and reflection. The pace is slow, deliberate, and enduring. Hours are spent adjusting water, checking seedlings, and reinforcing walls. Days blend into weeks. Labor is almost meditative in its repetition, a rhythm that mirrors the slow movement of water through channels and the steady growth of seedlings. The season is long, yet each repetitive task contributes to eventual survival. Even with care, uncertainty persists. Storms may suddenly alter water flow. Droughts may leave terraces dry. Minor misjudgments can cascade into significant losses. No amount of experience can fully eliminate risk. Survival depends on patient observation, repeated adjustment, and the discipline to continue despite uncertainty. Small successes are cumulative: a repaired wall, a properly irrigated terrace, a row of healthy seedlings. Each achievement is subtle, almost invisible, yet essential. The rhythm of labor, quiet, repetitive, and deliberate, ensures that the harvest is possible, even in a landscape that offers no margin for error. You stand in the flat, fertile plains between two wide rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. The air is warm, carrying the scent of wet soil, mud, and early vegetation. This land, often called the cradle of civilization, is shaped not by mountains or forests, but by the slow, methodical flow of water and the patient labor of farmers who must master it. Life here revolves around the careful management of irrigation, the planting of wheat and barley, and the constant attention to seasonal changes. The soil is rich, yet unpredictable. The rivers flood unpredictably, sometimes gently nourishing the fields, sometimes washing away months of careful work. Farmers have learned to channel, dam, and direct water with small dikes, canals, and levees. Observation is critical. Each morning, the farmer inspects the fields, noting water levels, soil texture, and the earliest signs of seedlings emerging. Every adjustment is subtle, repeated day after day. Wheat and barley dominate the fields. Seeds are sown in furrows, press lightly into moist soil. Children help with carrying baskets of seed or spreading them evenly, learning the rhythm of planting through repetition. Each seed planted represents hours of labor, plowing with wooden plows drawn by oxen, clearing debris, repairing irrigation channels. The work is slow, repetitive, and constant. Irrigation defines daily life. Canals must be inspected and repaired, gates adjusted, and soil mounds reinforced to prevent water from pooling or draining too quickly. Even minor errors, a blocked canal or a collapsed levee, can threaten the harvest. Farmers walk the length of every channel daily, monitoring flow, adjusting water levels, and repairing damage. This continuous observation and adjustment is critical for survival. Food for the laborers is simple and functional. Bread made from wheat, porridge, and occasional legumes provide sustenance. Meals are designed to maintain energy for long hours of repetitive labor rather than pleasure. The rhythm of work dictates the rhythm of life: wake, labor, observe, repair, eat, sleep, and repeat. Pests and environmental challenges are persistent. Insects nibble at young shoots. Rodents invade storage areas. Saline soil in some fields can reduce fertility. Even with constant observation, the outcome of a season is never guaranteed. Each day, repeated actions slowly accumulate toward the eventual harvest. The monotony is relentless, yet essential. Rituals mark significant points in the agricultural calendar. Offerings to the gods of water, fertility, and grain coincide with planting and harvest. Priests and temple officials maintain calendars to advise the timing of these activities, blending human labor with divine observation. The work of the field and the rhythm of the ritual are inseparable. Repetition and patience guide both survival and devotion. Despite centuries of accumulated knowledge, unpredictability remains. The rivers may flood too early, too late, or too violently. Pests, drought, or disease can strike without warning. Farmers adapt through careful observation, repetitive labor, and a disciplined approach to water and soil management. Success is never certain, yet steady effort ensures the best possible outcome. The plains stretch endlessly before you, a patchwork of furrows, canals, and small levees. The river's slow, steady movement dominates life here, shaping every decision, every action. You walk along narrow ridges, inspecting water flow, adjusting small gates, and reinforcing mud walls. Labor is repetitive, deliberate, and constant. Each motion, bending, pressing, smoothing, adjusting, is repeated hundreds of times, yet each is critical for the survival of the harvest. Irrigation is the defining feature of life in Mesopotamia. Water must be directed carefully. Too much floods the fields and washes away seedlings. Too little leaves soil dry and infertile. Canals and ditches must be checked daily. Small leaks or blockages are corrected immediately. Even a minor misalignment can reduce the yield of an entire field. Repetition is not monotony, it is survival. Wheat and barley seedlings require constant observation. You check for uneven growth, water stress, and pest damage. Birds threaten young shoots, rodents invade storage areas, and insects nibble leaves. Daily inspection and minor corrections prevent these small problems from escalating into major losses. Children assist, learning the rhythm of labor, carry baskets of seedlings, adjust water, or help repair embankments. Repetition is both labor and education. The work is physically demanding but almost hypnotic in its constancy. Hours are spent walking along furrows, adjusting water, inspecting plants, and repairing small breaches in channels. Meals are functional: bread, porridge, and occasionally legumes sustain long days. Food is consumed to maintain endurance rather than for enjoyment. The monotony of labor becomes a rhythm, guiding body and mind toward steady, patient work. Even small errors accumulate into risk. A blocked canal can leave an entire field dry, a collapsed levee can flood several plots. Each day's repetitive actions slowly build toward survival. The farmer learns to anticipate threats through careful observation, subtle adjustments, and constant vigilance. Patience and repetition are the tools of survival. Religious rituals mark points in the agricultural cycle. Offerings to Enki, the god of water, and other deities coincide with planting and harvest. Priests maintain calendars, advising when to plant, irrigate, and harvest. The rituals are functional, measured, and repetitive, reinforcing the connection between human labor and natural forces. Work and ritual intertwine seamlessly. Despite careful planning, uncertainty persists. River floods may arrive early or late. Droughts may parch fields unexpectedly. Pests, disease, or soil salinity can reduce yield. No amount of repeated labor can fully guarantee success. Farmers rely on disciplined observation, constant adjustment, and cumulative effort to mitigate risk. Small victories mark progress. A repaired levee, an evenly watered furrow, a row of thriving seedlings, all subtle, almost invisible achievements, but essential for survival. The rhythm of labor mirrors the rivers themselves: slow, steady, repetitive, and life-giving. By mid-season, the landscape becomes familiar in minute detail. You recognize slight changes in water flow, shifts in soil moisture, and the earliest signs of seedling growth. Observation has become instinct. Repetition has become meditation. The monotony of labor is a form of mastery, ensuring survival even in the face of unpredictable rivers. You find yourself on a gentle slope in the Italian countryside, overlooking rows of young grapevines stretching across the hills. The soil is dry, pebbly, and warm beneath your feet, reflecting the long hours of sun that define this region. Farming here is dominated by repetition and patience. Grapes take years to mature, and the rhythm of labor is slow, deliberate, and methodical. Survival and profit depend on consistent care, observation, and endurance. The vineyard is organized into neat rows, supported by stakes or trellises. Each vine is carefully pruned to direct growth, remove diseased branches, and maximize sunlight and airflow. The work is repetitive: bend, cut, tie, adjust, repeat. Even small errors can affect future yield. The success of harvests depends on patient, persistent effort. Water is scarce on these hills. Irrigation is minimal. Farmers must rely on rainfall and carefully tended soil to retain moisture. You check soil, move mulch, and occasionally divert small streams to the base of vines. Each adjustment is minor but cumulative. Consistent attention ensures that young vines survive the hot, dry months. Grape cultivation is intimately tied to the seasons. In early spring, pruning prepares the vines for growth. Summer requires monitoring for pests and diseases, adjusting support structures, and thinning fruit clusters to ensure quality. Fall brings harvest, a culmination of months of repetitive labor. Each task requires patience, precision, and constant observation. Meals sustain labor. Simple bread, cheese, olives, and occasionally dried fruits or meat provide energy for long days of bending, walking, and adjusting vines. Food is functional, intended to maintain endurance rather than delight. Work dominates the season, and leisure is limited. Children participate as well. Boys help carry pruning tools, girls carry water, and both learn by observing adults. Repetition is education. Through daily practice, they learn the rhythm of pruning, tying, and harvesting, gaining knowledge essential for the survival of vineyards over generations. Pests and disease are persistent threats. Insects, birds, and fungal infections can reduce yield dramatically. Regular inspection and minor interventions, removing affected leaves, tying vines carefully, adjusting soil and water, are repeated daily. The work is monotonous but essential. Survival depends on these small, repetitive actions. Rituals reinforce the agricultural calendar. Offerings to Bacchus, ceremonies marking planting or harvest, and other seasonal observances are measured and functional, intertwining human labor with belief and divine protection. Repetition in ritual mirrors repetition in labor, emphasizing the rhythm of work, patience, and observation. Even with careful attention, unpredictability persists. Drought, pests, frost, or disease can reduce yield or destroy it entirely. Every vine is vulnerable. The success of the vineyard depends on consistent labor, patient observation, and repeated, careful action. Mastery emerges from endurance rather than sudden brilliance. The hillside stretches before you, rows of young vines climbing slowly toward maturity. Each vine is a small project of care, attention, and repetition. Your hands, sticky with sap and soil, move through familiar motions, prune a branch here, tie a shoot there, adjust the soil around the roots. The work is quiet, almost hypnotic, and the rhythm of repeated action dominates every hour of the day. Pruning is the heart of vineyard labor. Each cut is deliberate, removing diseased or excessive growth, ensuring sunlight reaches every cluster, and directing energy toward the most promising shoots. Mistakes are cumulative, leave too many branches, and fruit quality suffers. Remove too much, and growth is stunted. Repetition is not boredom, it is survival and success. Water management is subtle but constant. The dry hills absorb rain slowly, and irrigation is minimal. Farmers monitor soil moisture carefully, adjusting water flow where possible, adding mulch, or deepening soil around roots to conserve water. Each small intervention may seem insignificant, but over time, it ensures that young vines survive the long, dry summer months. Observation is essential. Insects nibble leaves, fungal infections threaten clusters, and birds attempt to consume the fruit before it ripens. You walk the vineyard daily, scanning each row, adjusting supports, removing pests, and monitoring plant health. The repetition of these actions is unending, yet it ensures the long-term viability of the vineyard. Children learn by participating. Boys carry tools, girls carry water or prune smaller shoots, and both observe adult techniques. Repetition teaches skill, patience, and endurance. The rhythm of labor becomes instinctive, the slow pace of daily work a teacher of resilience. Generations learn through imitation, repetition, and careful observation of the landscape. Meals are functional, consumed quickly to maintain energy. Bread, cheese, olives, and occasional fruit fuel long days of bending, walking, and adjusting vines. Food sustains labor rather than delighting the senses. Every day blends into the next, a continuous cycle of observation, adjustment, and repetitive care. Even small victories are cumulative. A correctly pruned vine, a stabilized trellis, a well-watered row, these minor achievements quietly build toward a successful harvest. The rhythm of labor mirrors the slow growth of vines, deliberate, steady, and ultimately life-giving. Rituals continue alongside labor. Offerings to Bacchus, seasonal festivals marking planting or harvest, and prayers for protection from drought or pests are modest, repetitive, and functional. Work and ritual are intertwined. Repetition in ritual mirrors repetition in labor, reinforcing patience, observation, and endurance as essential skills for survival. Despite careful attention, uncertainty persists. Drought, frost, pests, and disease can strike unexpectedly. No amount of careful pruning, water management, or observation guarantees success. Labor is steady, repetitive, and cautious, aiming to reduce risk rather than eliminate it. Mastery emerges not from dramatic action, but from patient persistence and repeated attention over years. By mid-season, you are intimately familiar with the vineyard. Every row, every vine, every subtle shift in soil or leaf tells a story. Observation has become instinct. Repetition has become meditation. The monotony of labor is transformed into a form of mastery, ensuring survival and productivity even in the unpredictable hills of ancient Italy. You step into a low-lying river plain in ancient China. The air is humid and heavy with the scent of wet soil and young plants. Flat paddies stretch to the horizon, filled with water reflecting the sky above. Life here revolves around the careful management of water, patient labor, and repetitive tasks, all designed to ensure the slow, steady growth of rice. The work is quiet, monotonous, and utterly essential. Rice is planted in nursery plots before being transplanted into flooded fields. Children accompany adults, carrying seedlings, fetching water, or clearing mud from channels. Through repetition, they learn the rhythm of cultivation, transplant, monitor, adjust, repair, repeat. Labor is education as well as survival. Flooding is both a tool and a threat. Irrigation channels must be maintained to allow water to flow evenly across paddies. Too much water drowns seedlings, too little prevents growth. Farmers walk along channels daily, repairing small breaches, adjusting soil, and ensuring that every section of the field receives the right amount of water. Each action is minor, but over weeks, they accumulate into survival. Daily labor is physically demanding and repetitive. You bend over the muddy paddies, pressing each seedling into place, checking spacing, and monitoring growth. Hours pass slowly, punctuated only by the faint sound of water, wind, or birds. Food sustains labor. Rice porridge, vegetables, and occasional fish or meat maintain energy for long hours of repetitive work. Pleasure is secondary to survival. Observation is constant. Pests, weeds, and small animals threaten seedlings. Birds attempt to eat the plants, insects nibble leaves, rodents sometimes burrow into dikes or channels. Minor interventions, repeated daily, prevent small problems from becoming catastrophic. Patience and vigilance are central to success. The agricultural calendar is intertwined with ritual. Offerings to river spirits, ancestors, and deities coincide with planting, irrigation, and harvest. Rituals are modest and repetitive, reflecting dependence on forces beyond human control. Work and belief intertwine, reinforcing the rhythm of labor and patience required for survival. Despite careful attention, uncertainty is ever present. Storms, drought, or disease can reduce or destroy crops. Even with centuries of accumulated knowledge, no farmer can fully predict the season's outcome. Each day's repetition and careful observation are attempts to mitigate risk, not eliminate it. Small victories accumulate. Properly transplanted seedlings, a repaired irrigation channel, a successfully repelled pest, these minor achievements are essential. The rhythm of work, repetitive and deliberate, builds toward eventual survival. The slow pace of labor mirrors the slow growth of rice itself, patient, steady, and essential. By mid-season, familiarity with the landscape is deep. You know the flow of water through channels, the texture of the soil, and the subtle signs of seedlings thriving or struggling. Observation has become instinct, and repetition has become a form of quiet mastery. The monotony of work is transformed into a protective rhythm, sustaining both crops and community. You are on a gently rolling hillside in ancient Britain, where wind sweeps across grassy slopes and the soil is a mixture of clay and loam. Small fields are divided by low stone walls, patches of pasture, and scattered settlements. Life here is slow, deliberate, and dominated by the rhythms of the seasons. Survival depends on careful labor, constant observation, and repeated attention to the land and animals. Barley is the staple crop. It grows in short seasons, but requires careful preparation. Plowing is done with wooden plows pulled by oxen, turning the soil to create furrows for planting. Repetition is central. Each row must be straight, evenly spaced, and sufficiently deep. Even minor mistakes can reduce yield, leaving the community vulnerable to food shortages. Seeds are sown carefully, pressed lightly into the soil, and protected from birds and small animals. Children help by carrying seeds, following adults along furrows, and learning the rhythms of planting. Repetition is education, observing, imitating, and gradually mastering the techniques necessary to survive in a challenging environment. Water is unpredictable. Rainfall varies, and droughts can stress crops. Small channels or trenches are dug to guide water toward fields, and embankments are reinforced to prevent erosion. Each day requires careful observation, minor adjustments, and repeated action. Even the smallest improvement in soil moisture can make a difference over weeks. Animals are integral to survival. Sheep, goats, and cattle graze pastures, providing milk, meat, and wool. They must be guided to prevent overgrazing and protected from predators. Daily labor includes herding, repairing pens, and monitoring the health of each animal. Repetition, patience, and careful observation are essential. Meals are functional: barley bread, porridge, cheese, and occasional meat fuel long hours of labor. Food sustains endurance rather than offering pleasure. Life follows a slow rhythm: rise at dawn, work the land or tend animals, eat, sleep, and repeat. Repetition dominates the year, teaching resilience and attention to detail. Small errors have significant consequences. A misjudged frost can kill seedlings, a collapsed embankment can wash away soil, and disease can affect animals. Vigilance and repetition mitigate risk. Farmers spend long hours walking fields, checking soil, observing plants, and repairing minor damages. Each small action contributes to survival. Rituals and seasonal festivals mark important points in the agricultural calendar. Offerings to local deities, ceremonies to bless crops or animals, and communal gatherings are modest, repetitive, and functional. Labor and belief are intertwined. Repetition in ritual mirrors repetition in work, reinforcing the rhythm of survival. Despite careful planning, uncertainty persists. Storms, frost, pests, and disease can reduce yields or destroy them entirely. Farmers rely on patient observation, repeated labor, and endurance to protect crops and livestock. Success is built slowly, through consistency rather than dramatic effort. You find yourself in the shadow of a medieval monastery in Europe. Surrounding the stone buildings are fields of wheat, barley, and vegetables, all meticulously tended by monks and lay workers. Life here is repetitive, slow, and governed by the rhythm of both labor and prayer. Survival, and the sustenance of the surrounding community, depends on the careful observation of soil, crops, and seasons. The day begins before sunrise. Oxen are harnessed to wooden plows, furrows turned carefully to prepare soil for planting. Each row must be straight, deep, and evenly spaced. Labor is repetitive, deliberate, and physically demanding. Mistakes can reduce yield or leave soil poorly prepared for months. The monotony of plowing, planting, and tending is punctuated only by brief periods of rest and prayer. Seeds are sown with care, pressed lightly into the soil. Barley and wheat dominate, though vegetables and herbs grow near the monastery walls. Children and novices assist, learning the rhythms of planting, watering, and tending through repetition. Education is embedded in labor, observing, mimicking, and mastering techniques essential to survival. Water is carefully managed. Small ditches, channels, and reservoirs direct rain and river water to fields. Daily inspection is necessary. Minor blockages, broken dikes, or uneven soil can reduce the productivity of entire fields. Repetition of these adjustments ensures survival and maintains the rhythm of labor. Animals are vital. Oxen pull plows, cattle provide milk and meat, and chickens or pigs supplement food stores. Daily care includes feeding, herding, pen repair, and monitoring health. Each day's routine is repetitive but essential for long-term survival. Mistakes can quickly become shortages, making attention to detail critical. Meals are simple and functional. Porridge, bread, cheese, and vegetables provide energy for long hours of work. Monks eat in silence, focusing on sustenance rather than enjoyment. The rhythm of labor is mirrored in the rhythm of daily meals, prayers, and rest. Repetition becomes both meditation and survival skill. Even minor errors have consequences. A misjudged frost can damage young seedlings, poorly maintained ditches may flood fields, and pests can spread quickly. Repeated vigilance mitigates risk. Every day, small actions, repairing dikes, weeding, adjusting plow paths, accumulate into harvest success. Rituals are embedded in the agricultural calendar. Religious observances, blessings of fields, and seasonal prayers are modest, repetitive, and functional. They reinforce the rhythm of labor, emphasizing patience, careful observation, and endurance. Work and ritual are inseparable, shaping the life of the monastery and surrounding community. Despite centuries of experience, uncertainty remains. Floods, droughts, pests, or disease can reduce yields unexpectedly. Farmers rely on repeated attention, disciplined labor, and careful observation to maintain productivity. Success comes from consistent effort, not dramatic action. You find yourself on a steep, misty hillside in ancient Southeast Asia. The slopes are carved into rice terraces, each step carefully leveled and filled with shallow water. The monsoon governs life here. The timing and intensity of rains dictate planting, tending, and harvest. Survival depends on meticulous labor, constant observation, and repetitive daily actions. Terraces are constructed from stone and mud, reinforced continuously to prevent collapse. Each channel, each step, directs water precisely, ensuring that every seedling receives the moisture it needs. Even minor misalignment or erosion can flood a terrace or leave it dry. Daily labor includes repairing walls, clearing irrigation channels, and adjusting soil. Repetition that seems monotonous but is essential for survival. Rice seedlings are raised in nursery plots before being transplanted. You bend repeatedly, pressing each seedling into mud, spacing them evenly, and observing their growth. Children assist, carrying seedlings, clearing debris, or adjusting channels. Through repetition, they learn the rhythms of cultivation: plant, monitor, adjust, repair, repeat. Labor is education and survival combined. Water management dominates every day. Monsoon rains bring abundance and risk. Too much water can wash away terraces, too little hinders growth. Farmers walk the channels daily, repairing leaks, reinforcing walls, and redirecting flow. Subtle interventions, repeated consistently, ensure that terraces remain viable. The rhythm of labor mirrors the rhythm of water: patient, steady, and essential. The work is physically demanding. Hours are spent bending, lifting, and walking along narrow terraces, mud sticking to hands and feet. Meals are functional: rice, vegetables, and occasional fish provide energy for long hours. Food sustains endurance rather than pleasure, allowing laborers to persist through repetition and monotony. Observation is constant. Pests threaten seedlings, birds and insects feed on the young shoots, occasional landslides or erosion can damage terraces. Minor interventions, removing pests, repairing channels, reinforcing soil, are repeated daily. The success of the harvest depends on patient, repetitive care, and careful observation of subtle environmental cues. Rituals accompany labor. Offerings to water deities, spirits of the land, and ancestors coincide with planting and harvest. These ceremonies are modest, repetitive, and functional, reinforcing the link between human effort, natural cycles, and survival. Labor and belief are intertwined, teaching patience, endurance, and respect for natural forces. Even with centuries of accumulated knowledge, unpredictability remains. Sudden storms, landslides, or droughts can destroy months of labor. Farmers rely on repeated attention, careful adjustments, and cumulative effort to reduce risk. Survival is a slow, deliberate process, achieved through discipline and observation rather than sudden intervention. Small successes accumulate: a repaired terrace wall, a properly irrigated terrace, or a row of healthy seedlings. These subtle achievements are essential for survival. The rhythm of labor mirrors the flow of water through terraces: slow, steady, repetitive, and life-giving. You are standing on a rocky slope in ancient Greece, overlooking olive groves that stretch across sun-baked hills. The soil is shallow, often rocky, and the climate is dry for much of the year. Farming here is defined by repetition, careful observation, and patience. Survival depends on tending every tree, every terrace, and every olive pit with meticulous attention. The groves are arranged on terraces built from stone, preventing soil erosion and maximizing use of steep hillsides. Each terrace requires constant maintenance: stones are adjusted, small walls repaired, and soil replenished. Even minor neglect can lead to collapse, soil loss, and reduced harvest. Daily labor revolves around these repetitive tasks, ensuring long-term survival. Olive trees are slow to mature, often taking years to bear significant fruit. Young trees require careful pruning to shape branches and encourage growth. You bend repeatedly, snipping away excess shoots, tying branches, and checking the health of leaves. Children follow, carrying small tools, moving soil, and observing techniques. Repetition is both education and labor. Water is scarce. Farmers rely on seasonal rainfall, carefully distributing limited water to maximize absorption. Terraces help retain moisture, but each terrace requires inspection and adjustment. Small interventions, moving stones, mounding soil, or adjusting channels, are repeated daily, accumulating into survival. Labor dominates the day. Hours are spent walking terraces, pruning branches, inspecting soil, and clearing weeds. Meals are functional: bread, olives, cheese, and occasional fish or meat provide energy for long, physically demanding days. Food sustains endurance rather than pleasure. The rhythm of labor, constant and repetitive, structures daily life. Observation is essential. Pests threaten fruit and leaves, and drought can weaken trees. Daily vigilance, removing pests, adjusting soil, and maintaining terraces, prevents minor issues from becoming catastrophic. Patience and repetition are central to success. Rituals accompany labor. Offerings to Demeter or local deities mark planting, pruning, or harvest. Ceremonies are modest, repetitive, and functional, reflecting the interdependence of human effort and divine favor. Labor and ritual reinforce each other, emphasizing patience, endurance, and respect for natural forces. Even with careful labor, uncertainty persists. Drought, Disease or pest infestations can reduce yields unexpectedly. Every terrace and tree is vulnerable. Success depends on steady, repetitive attention rather than sudden action. Mastery emerges from persistence and careful observation over years. Small successes accumulate: a repaired terrace, a healthy tree, or a well-pruned branch. These subtle achievements are essential for long-term survival. The rhythm of labor mirrors the slow growth of olive trees: deliberate, patient, repetitive, and life-sustaining. The hillside stretches before you, a mosaic of terraces filled with olive trees at various stages of growth. Each tree is a small project of careful attention and repetitive labor. Your hands, roughened from daily work, move through familiar motions: prune a branch, tie a shoot, adjust soil around the roots. The rhythm is steady, meditative, and vital. Every motion, bending, cutting, lifting, repairing, is repeated dozens or hundreds of times, yet each contributes to the survival and future productivity of the grove. Pruning dominates daily labor. Each cut removes diseased, dead, or excess branches, directing sunlight and nutrients toward the healthiest shoots. Even small mistakes accumulate over time. Prune too little, and fruit quality suffers. Prune too much, and growth is stunted. Repetition ensures mastery. Years of careful pruning determine the quality and quantity of the harvest. Terraces require constant attention. Stones shift, soil erodes, and small channels for water management must be maintained. Each morning, you walk the terraces, checking walls, adjusting soil, and repairing minor damage. Even subtle interventions, repeated consistently, preserve the delicate balance between land, tree, and labor. Without this repetition, terraces collapse and productivity declines. Observation is constant. Pests threaten leaves and fruit, drought stresses young trees, and disease can spread quickly if unchecked. Daily vigilance, removing insects, adjusting soil moisture, and reinforcing terraces, prevents minor problems from becoming disasters. Children learn by participating, carrying small tools, observing pruning, and assisting in minor repairs. Repetition teaches endurance, skill, and survival. Meals are simple and functional. Bread, olives, cheese, and occasional fish or meat provide energy for long, physically demanding days. Food sustains labor rather than pleasure. The rhythm of work, pruning, repairing terraces, observing, adjusting, dominates daily life, reinforcing patience and endurance. Even minor successes are cumulative. A repaired terrace wall, a healthy tree, a carefully pruned branch, these subtle achievements quietly build toward long-term survival. Repetition is the key. Each day's labor, no matter how dull, contributes directly to the future harvest. Rituals remain intertwined with labor. Offerings to local deities mark planting, pruning, or harvest. Ceremonies are modest, functional, and repetitive, echoing the rhythm of the daily work. Labor and ritual reinforce each other, emphasizing patient observation, endurance, and the careful management of the natural environment. Despite centuries of accumulated knowledge, uncertainty persists. Drought, pests, or erosion can threaten even the most carefully tended groves. Farmers rely on repetition, observation, and cumulative labor to minimize risk. Success is slow, subtle, and emerges from persistence rather than dramatic action. By mid-season, familiarity with the landscape is deep. You know every terrace, every tree, and every subtle change in leaf or soil moisture. Observation has become instinct, repetition has become meditation. The monotony of labor transforms into a quiet mastery, sustaining both trees and the communities that depend on them. Even minor successes are cumulative. A repaired terrace wall, a healthy tree, a carefully pruned branch, these subtle achievements quietly build toward long-term survival. Repetition is the key. Each day's labor, no matter how dull, contributes directly to the future harvest. Rituals remain intertwined with labor. Offerings to local deities mark planting, pruning, or harvest. Ceremonies are modest, functional, and repetitive, echoing the rhythm of the daily work. Labor and ritual reinforce each other, emphasizing patient observation, endurance, and the careful management of the natural environment. Despite centuries of accumulated knowledge, uncertainty persists. Drought, pests, or erosion can threaten even the most carefully tended groves. Farmers rely on repetition, observation, and cumulative labor to minimize risk. Success is slow, subtle, and emerges from persistence rather than dramatic action. By mid-season, familiarity with the landscape is deep. You know every terrace, every tree, and every subtle change in leaf or soil moisture. Observation has become instinct, repetition has become meditation. The monotony of labor transforms into a quiet mastery, sustaining both trees and the communities that depend on them. Water, soil, and stone continue to demand attention. Terraces are inspected again after harvest, small repairs made to prevent erosion over the dry months. Each intervention, though minor, contributes to the long-term viability of the grove. Repetition has become a method of survival, a slow, deliberate dance between human labor and the forces of nature. The harvest is celebrated modestly. Offerings are made to deities, families gather for a simple meal, and the community reflects quietly on another season survived. Ritual mirrors labor, repetition reinforces endurance, observation, and the careful tending of the land. Work and ritual together create a rhythm that sustains both grove and people. Yet uncertainty remains. Drought may strike before the next season, pests may return, and erosion threatens the terraces. Every successful harvest is fragile, dependent on continued vigilance and repeated labor. The lessons of patience, observation, and steady care are the true harvest, ensuring that knowledge and survival persist across generations. Looking out over terraces glimmering in the afternoon light, olive trees heavy with fruit, and stone walls holding the soil in place, a quiet reflection forms. The value of repeated, patient labor is not only in the immediate yield but in the continuity it creates. Generations of farmers have learned that survival does not come from dramatic action or sudden brilliance. It comes from observing, adjusting, and persevering steadily, season after season. The groves endure because humans endure. Each tree, each terrace, each harvest is a monument to repetition, patience, and careful attention. And in that endurance lies a quiet lesson for anyone who watches, bends, and works through the monotony of life. Survival is shaped not by grand gestures, but by countless small, persistent actions that accumulate over time.